Welcome back to the Man Cave, everybody, for episode 71 of the ManTFup podcast. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
And today we're talking about taxes. Surprise, surprise. I came across a feed, or I should say, a post on a feed on my Instagram account. I was going to give them the whole spiel that I usually do, but I just want to jump right into it because we have a hard stop. And basically it said the biggest scam in life is paying taxes on the money we make, paying taxes on the money we spend, and taxes on the things we own that we already paid taxes on with already taxed money, right? And then the person goes on to kind of break some things down. Don't let social media fool you. You are probably much better off than you think. The average American has less than $1,000 in savings, gets their first home at 36 years old, has $42,000 in student loans at age 50. 75% live paycheck to paycheck, except 401ks, owns no investments. Society is built on getting you into debt. $20,000 engagement ring, $50,000 wedding, $500,000 mortgage, $500 monthly car payment, if you're lucky, $100,000 in student loans, all seen as normal in 2023 society, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, they said slavery didn't end. They just figured out a different way to control you with debt. Somebody said if the last 40 years repeats itself, in 2063, we'll see these prices. New car, $136,000. Average rent will be $9,000. Gas prices will be $13.39 a gallon. Home price will be $1.883 million, and the average salary will be $103,640. The hidden tax is what it's quoted as. And I mean, the post I think is a great post, but the first thing that I did is I immediately went to the comments to see what people's reactions were going to be to it, because there's 2,000 of them. And some of the comments blew me away. People were like, well, if that's how you feel, stop driving on our roads, stop using the water, stop using the electric, stop using the government. Somebody else said, can't have a society of infrastructure, law enforcement, and support without the programs that are paid for by taxes. Somebody else added in the credit score scam, said you need to maintain some sort of debt to maintain good credit, pay it all off, don't use any credit cards, the score goes down, shaking my head. Somebody else said, we just got to stop paying. Can't imprison everyone. And that particular comment got a bunch of other, that's so true. They can't imprison everyone. Say this all the time. Me too. Revolution can change many things. They won't have money to run the prisons without taxes, so I guess you are correct. Imagine that. A society where no police exist and roads are crap. Well, except in Buffalo. And when you flush your toilet, it pours into the streets. Yep, can't wait. So once again, the internet never ceases to disappoint when it comes to proving why we started this podcast, because folks are clearly on two very different sides of the conversation, the argument, whatever you would like to call it.
Feed.
Yeah. To the folks yelling, just stop paying taxes, I got to go with Buddy that's come. I just,
Yeah, I
you can't just stop paying taxes. I mean, you can.
You can. And some people have. And some people have actually fought the government and won on paying taxes, because there's really some strange laws that people don't even know about when it comes to the IRS. But stopping paying your taxes as a strike.
Like an FU?
As a strike. Yeah. To maybe get some clarity on what's going on, or get the government to wake up and say, hey, we want some change at the top. That's one thing. Stopping paying your taxes. Taxes are always going to be necessary. Mm-hmm. That goes without saying. That, that's what runs our things that we're used to. That's how the police come to your house.
I just don't think when people say that they understand that.
No, they don't. Well, I think they do and they don't. You have to remember, in different places, property tax here versus property tax in Kentucky versus property tax, in Houston.
Well, or even state income tax. There are people who have lived their whole life in Florida that have no idea that people actually get taxed.
Yeah, well, that's why all the New Yorkers are here.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's a lot of states that are not,
Yeah, there's only a few that don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't have a state income.
But for the people that grow up in those places, like I grew up in Massachusetts, aka Taxachusetts, right? Like that's the running joke, but we are literally number one for public education, and a lot of other things. Always had pretty well-funded police departments, fire departments, happy teachers. I can't speak to now. I haven't been there in forever. I've been in Florida. But that's where your tax money went, right? Like, and people complained about it, but at the end of the day, I feel like you could see where your tax money was going. And I think if people could see where their tax money was going, the argument would be a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, but you have to figure, you look at the first responders, at the teachers. They're not getting a whole lot of money.
Well, also,
and they're getting taxed on top of that.
but also they're not, or I shouldn't say there, but when you think about privatization of so many things, right? Like most hospitals used to be public hospitals that anybody had access to, and they had certain laws and regulations. Like you can't turn people away from a public hospital. Jackson, thank God, because it's also an incredible trauma center. But there's a lot of other ones that they have to patch you. They can't send you away dying, but as soon as they've got you stable, they can stick you in an ambulance and send you off because they're a privatized hospital and they are in the business of making money. Do you know what I'm saying? I know I've seen articles that have come up about, in California, for example, during the wildfires, people being irate at the fact that folks with exorbitant amounts of money are able to protect their property because they hire privatized fire department services. So they're not stealing the Calabasas fire department away, right? This is somebody, probably a retired firefighter or off-duty firefighters who have created a privatized industry, and they go out and they foam lawns and homes and they put up, different fire retardants and things like that. But those people that are paying for that service are also saving some of their neighbors' homes when they do it. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I can't hate on that.
No, but it begins to get a little dicey when you start yelling, stop paying taxes, because when you stop paying taxes and you start defunding things, the opportunists and the capitalists in this country, which is something that many people love about America, right? It's America. This is why people come here, is because, technically anybody can make it if you have the guts and the gusto and the drive. But they will see the loophole there and go, oh, bet. Let me slide on in here and make some money off of this.
But they already have. You just mentioned the private.
I get it, but that's not my fucking garbage. That's not the sewer. That's not the water systems. That's not all the other things that, our dollars go to support. That's not stimulus checks when you're in a pandemic. That's not Medicaid and Medicare.
People don't understand the tax system or any of it.
Thank you.
Or what they're paying because, where the money comes from, what's subsidized by the government for counties and regions and what's paid for by the state and where your sales tax goes and where your property tax goes. You have to understand all of that. So when you say stop paying your taxes, I think if the whole entire country decided not to pay their taxes for a couple days, somebody might look up and go, hey, wait, we need to negotiate this. They do it with the auto workers just did it. They got Ford to pay.
Yeah, they stopped making cars. I understand that. How do you stop paying taxes? What do you go into the store and go,
it's almost impossible.
That 7% right there, I'm not paying it. Like, because I'm going to drop this 20. You can take that $2.30 and shove it up your ass. Like, I mean, I don't think it's going to get very far.
Your boss is already paying it for you. It comes out of your paycheck.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to say, even as a consumer, it's hard to get a, you know what I mean? It's in your check.
Sales
it's not
tax,
like, hey.
Forget about it. You can't get around sales tax. You won't be able to buy anything.
But again, you pay sales tax in a state like Florida, so do the tourists. That's what helps offset us not paying an income tax, right? A state income tax. So again, it constantly goes back on this couch to a lack of information and a lack of awareness with the things that have us all outraged and in an uproar, right? Like you mentioned before we started the podcast today, how you're seeing a lot more concern for the situations that are happening at home on U.S. soil while we send billions of dollars, overseas to other countries.
I think that's a big part of the tax argument.
Well, again, I don't disagree. And it's funny because I have a great friend of mine who's extremely successful, and he refuses to support, any NGO that doesn't do their work here in our own backyard. He's like, I'm a huge proponent of, philanthropic giving. He's like, but we have hungry people in our backyards. We have homeless people in our backyards. We have kids that don't have access to education in our backyards. We have, young girls who don't have the funding to buy, feminine hygiene products in this country. And we take a lot of that for granted because so many of us do. We forget that there's a large population in the US that doesn't, that is literally making the decision on a daily basis between keeping the lights on and putting food on the table or buying diapers or buying formula. And that's a very frightening place to be at. It's disappointing that it takes you being outraged with a particular administration in many cases for you to all of a sudden support your fellow Americans. And yes, I do kind of feel that way.
I think it's been in the last probably 8 years that that difference between being able to, the cost of living has gone up exponentially, and the cost of making money hasn't. So
pretty sure I've said that 1,000 times
yes,
on this
but
couch.
Hey. I don't think in 1995 this was as big a problem in this country. I mean, we had homeless, we had people who weren't but
the homeless population was in Miami-Dade County in the 80s and early 90s. 10,000 homeless people were on the streets of Miami-Dade.
Well, we got an influx in the mid-'80s of people that...
I get that, but we set up the Homeless Trust of Miami-Dade County specifically to combat that, and they got it down over 30 years to under 1,000, which was fantastic, and now it's going up again. And I told you, I think recently on this podcast, that the more frightening part about that is one of the largest growing populations of homeless in this country are the elderly, which is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what does that say about a country that can't take care of its veterans, its elderly, and its children? Right?
It says we're sending our tax money somewhere else.
We're sending our, but
that's what people
that's not
get from
recent,
it.
though. I get that, but like you can't get mad about that now. We've been sending billions, if not trillions, overseas for the better part of 60 years.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Maybe more. You talk about you take it back to World War II.
Again, when this country could afford to do it, it was doing it, and it was no problem. The problem comes when you continue to subsidize the rest of the world, yet your own country is lacking in what it needs. So, listen,
poverty in the 80s was like, but you know this, Len, everywhere. Like, you can't. None of these issues are new, and a lot of times they're cyclical. But like Detroit got hit 80s and 90s. Like when you start talking about cities blowing up and industry leaving and all of these things, this has again been a situation for quite a long time. And I should say a developing situation. And maybe now it's coming to a head. And part of that, I think, has to do with the fact that we were locked down, not we here in Florida, but other people for a year, and they had time to actually look around, right?
But so we know what's happening. Our country has been slipping back since we allowed our companies to take their business overseas. There's a bunch of stuff that was allowed by the government that probably was detrimental to us. But that doesn't mean that we continue the way we were before. Our country is in this position. We still shouldn't be supporting the rest of the world at the level we were in the 50s. It's got to be, there has to be a balance.
No, you definitely have to turn.
There has to be a balance.
You have to turn the focus to home. But there are people who have been championing that for a very long time that are not mad about paying taxes. I being one of them. Like, I have no problem paying my taxes so long as we are taking care of people. I think right now the argument is a little skewed.
In the early 2000s, mid 90s, nobody knew what kind of money was going overseas. Nobody could quantify the billions or trillions of dollars.
I remember the Halliburton conversations in the early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, you do, because you're educated and you have a different, right now, every 320 million people can hear the same thing within 5 minutes.
But can I tell you something? And I understand that. But can I tell you why? But again, let me explain.
Iran-Contra.
No,
all of
I get that.
crap.
But a lot of the people who know and understood those things, it's when people are angry with the administration and you disagree with it. So what do? You dig and you decipher and you go looking for things and information and ammunition. So yes, to the point where folks, I think, were having more, a lot of the political conversations were happening in a silo with friends for a very long time. And now they're happening on a very large scale, with just
Have you heard a lot of Democrats coming out lately that they're not happy with what's going on in the federal government right now?
I've heard everybody. First of all, if you appreciate America for what it is, this is not about being a staunch blue or a staunch red person. This is about being an American. I get that. Like, this isn't.
I get that, but you said it's because they were not happy with the administration, and I think a lot of people aren't happy with administration, left and right.
Across the board.
Yeah. So the fact
100%.
that it's becoming all this other stuff is becoming more relevant now is because more people are.
But again, it's not new. Like, this has been.
Yes,
I guess
been
my
getting
point
fucked
is
forever. We know.
yes, but okay.
Everybody knows they're getting fucked in the United States. I think.
Okay, so then who does the blame really lie on?
Well,
Because again, I can't count how many times.
That's a stacked question, and that's a stacked question because who does it really lie on? You can say it all lies on the people, right? You voted for them, so it's your fault. Yes and no, okay? If you take 300 million people and you take 150 million of them and you show them one thing, and you take 150 million of them and you show them something else, you now have two different
Lenny,
sets
but
of
the real
thoughts.
information is at your fingertips. Everything the government does, I could tell you every penny we spent on the Trump administration. It's all public record. We can go back and we can see it. I can see how much money we spent at golf courses. I can see how much money we spent on Air Force One. I can see how much money we spent on security. I can see all of that. I can see it for Biden. I can see it for Bush. I can see it for Obama. I can see it for everybody. It's public record. Where our tax dollars go, as far as what the federal government sends to Tallahassee, it's public record, as are the voting records of all the people that you voted for.
So how much?
Right?
What's the income? Well, if everything's public record,
but the point
what's
is,
the total intake?
we don't look for it, though. This is I'm not going to sit here and spout numbers. What I'm saying is, for every person that has a vote that then votes somebody in and then just sits back and takes their hands off of it and gets mad 4 years later when nothing changes, it's all at your fingertips. The people that are pissed in California, you've had the same senators in office for 30 fucking years. The same 95-year-old geriatrics have literally been doing your voting for you for decades. Don't get mad now. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is, even in Massachusetts, we had Ted Kennedy sitting on, Capitol Hill for what? The better part, and was more powerful and probably got more shit done and did more shit than John, Bobby, any of them. Do you know what I'm saying? Because he had
long enough.
But that's my point. And we discussed the whole power of the Senate and what happens on Capitol Hill. So it's frustrating to me because we sit here and we blame the government for like steamrolling us. But at the end of the day, it says it in their title. They're public servants. So it just goes back to the laziness. It's not just physical laziness. It's mental laziness. It's, it's just an overwhelming sense of I'd rather just sit back and bitch about it until it changes or just all fucking blows up.
So you have, let's say, 20,000 people that aren't happy with something in a local election. Then you have 80,000 people that are reading into this politician's whatever he's selling them because they're all salesmen. Every politician that was elected in the past 50 years ran on something that they didn't do.
But you realize that every time they want to raise a tax, especially locally, it's on a ballot.
Yeah.
It's on a ballot. They can't go in and willy-nilly go fucking raise your taxes and just say, take it in the kisser, buddy. They don't do that.
Yeah.
So if you don't vote, if you don't take your happy ass out to that rando local election that just happened out of nowhere, right? You don't get to be mad that your property tax went up another 2% or 3%. If you didn't go out and cast, now you can be mad if you get outvoted, but do you know what the percentage of people are that vote in actual local elections versus, even midterm elections versus the big dog presidential elections? We've talked about it, and it gets smaller and smaller with every category.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like all the shit that we're talking about that you're mad about, it's on a ballot for you to vote on.
Some of it. But nobody tells the people that. They tell the people, I told you the last governor election I went to, it was only on one thing. There was only one thing people in Florida were voting on. and that was Roe v. Wade. That was it. That was the only topic. Nobody gave a fuck about anything else because nobody heard about anything else. Nobody heard about this judge who might be better than this judge or this who might be better than this. Nobody heard about that. All they heard about was Roe v. Wade.
Can I tell you something, though? Like, honestly, I'm not mad at things going to hell in a handbasket. And I say that because the amount of dissension that you're seeing, while it's extremely frightening, right? And we know that no democracy, and have you seen the latest where people love to like come and critique on our podcast that we're in a republic, we're in a constitutional republic, we're in a democratic republic. This has become a new talking point, especially for like the January 6ers, which is just funny to me because before that it was democracy. You know what I mean? That was what every American hung their fucking hat on, was democracy. We're not a democracy. Now we're not a democracy. But whatever. I feel like for people like me, it's been even more of a wake-up call. Like, I was always an engaged person. I was always a well-read person. I always enjoyed having, interesting conversations with people. I remember when Bush beat Al Gore. Was that 2000? That was 2000. I don't know that I was registered to vote in Massachusetts. So I think I sent in an absentee ballot. So I didn't get to vote in Florida. But I remember being so outraged by what happened in Florida because remember it was like 600 votes. Then they called the election. It was a lot. So it's been happening. Craziness with elections has been happening.
And his brother was the governor.
And his brother was the governor.
That doesn't have anything to do
with it. And his brother was the governor.
There's no nepotism in government.
I remember after that election changing everything over to the state of Florida, getting a Florida driver's license. I registered to vote here because in my mind, Massachusetts has always been a Democratic state for the most part, right? We usually go blue. And I was like, I feel like my vote will count more in the state of Florida, right? So that was early 2000s. And with every election, and everything that happens, and you have obviously the banking crisis and the housing crisis in 2008, and you start looking and you're paying attention to things. Every time shit blows up, for the people that are invested, and I don't know how many Americans actually are, but for the people like you, for the people like me, I feel like I learn a little bit more about how everything works, right? I learn stuff from you every time we sit on this couch. I learn stuff from the people that comment on our podcast. But I feel like we're getting to a place where, folks were so outraged by what happened with SCOTUS that now they're starting to do research on what scope of power the Supreme Court actually has, right? Like they're starting to really wrap their brains around it. They're starting to figure out what the legislative branch does versus the executive branch versus the judicial. You know what I mean? I know for the last few elections, I've paid more attention to our judges than almost anything else. Like I've done my research. I've pulled, the spec sheets on them. I've read up on what their bench record is, what the things that they're, known for are, what their knocks are. The Bar Association does a breakdown of all of these people. There's like, judge squads that'll, let you know how they fare. So there's information out there. It's all out there. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about actual facts. I'm not talking about perspectives and opinions and this side versus that side. I'm talking about the actual numbers. Like you could pull the specs for what goes into education in the state of Florida, right? Like we talk about the lotto all the time. Another $1 billion jackpot just happened, which is wild. It feels like every other freaking jackpot is a $1 billion jackpot now. But again, 40% of that is supposed to be going towards education. Something crazy, some very large number.
Yeah, and based on the Florida, that's how they sold us.
The Florida lottery, right?
On the Florida lottery. We didn't have the lottery until the mid-90s, I think. Maybe late 90s.
Okay.
But all the money from the Florida lottery was supposed to go to education in the state of Florida. And I don't see it. I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
I don't know where it all goes because I see a lot of motherfuckers buying lottery tickets.
Facts. But I would, again, I guarantee you, if you were to go to Tallahassee, there's got to be a place for you to see that.
Oh, yeah.
What
absolutely.
is generated by the Florida lottery, right? What department has its hands on it? How is it getting allocated to education? Is it going to program? Is it going to teachers? Is it going to infrastructure? Is it going to building new schools? Is it going to where, to your point, where is it going? right? And life is just expensive. So there's a frustrating thing about it, when you're seeing these large sums of money. But as the cost of living has gone up for all of us regular folks, it's also, I'm sure, costing more money to run and fund the government.
Maybe. I mean, I don't, predominantly the government's overhead is employees.
Yeah.
They're not making more money.
So, I mean, like you said, it's one of those things like...
Where the fuck's money going? Which is really the only reason that people are boycotting taxes. I think if people really saw, there's been so much pushback on, especially since Trump and everything, on, America's the best country in the world. And there's been a lot of pushback. What are you basing that on? Mm-hmm. What are you basing on it? Do you have the most opportunities in the United States? Maybe. Are you free? No, you're not free. You're not, there's restrictions on everything you do in the United States. That's just the way it is. There's no 100% freedom.
Free in comparison to what, though?
Free in compared to what? Compared to what?
So give me a country that's more free than we are.
Or as free. Canada, Norway, Sweden, England. There's millions.
Yeah, but you also just named a bunch of social.
But it doesn't matter.
Countries.
Freedom versus what?
No. But you're talking about but again, most of those nations have also based a lot of what they do.
Australia.
On us.
Yes, that's great. But the things that are lacking in this country, healthcare, obesity, all the problems we have in this country, these other countries don't have.
Yeah, but that's also, part of that, well, yeah.
And there's no one trying to actively fix these problems in the United States. Okay, we know that the majority of the United States has a 6th grade education level.
But okay. But why? You have public schools in every community.
Why is the question?
But that's because you are free to drop the fuck out and go make money. Mm-hmm. Or because you're poor and you have to drop out and go make money. So, it's a double-edged sword, and I don't understand why we're blaming the government for all of for some of our personal...
Because all we're seeing is stuff about the government.
Choices.
All we're seeing is where the government is spending our money. That's all we're seeing, Kimmy. That's all people are seeing nowadays is where, since I want to say since Trump came into office, but prior to Trump, did you hear something about the president every single fucking day of your life?
When Obama was in office, yes.
I didn't, and I was, I didn't hear what he had for lunch or what happened here or what happened there. I mean, you heard the big things. You heard when he got Bin Laden.
He also wasn't tweeting every day. If you wonder why we heard about the president every day when Trump was in office, the man tweeted out what he had for fucking breakfast.
I get it.
Literally from the toilet while he was bitching about
Biden
CNN.
Every day now. You hear about the government every day.
Well, because they're kowtowing to people who want that. You've got people that are not happy and they want to hear the negative things, right? Because so they can say, oh, this is what we were talking about. Same way prior to, you had a faction of people that wanted to hear the fuckery of this man tweeting out nonsense and whatever. So they could be like, look, this is the person running the country, right? No, I would like for our president to run the country. I also am the type of person that looks at our president and goes, he's a figurehead. His job is to fly around the world, shake hands, kiss babies. That is what he does. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice if the president was at the forefront of policy. Not really his job. Those other motherfuckers that sit in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, they can't figure out who they want to be their leader right now. Those asshats, those are the people making the decision.
They figured out who they didn't want.
Yeah, clearly for the first time in history. This is special stuff we got.
We don't want you, but I don't know.
But they already knew that when it took them 17 times to vote him in the first place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes. But you're mad about things that are happening in this state, Tallahassee. And I am happy, again, as the stuff has blown up with education in this state, you're seeing a lot more people getting involved, a lot more people doing the research, a lot more people reading. But to your point, Len, when we have candidates that are campaigning, first of all, how many people are going out to campaign stops, right? To campaign rallies? How many people are actually showing up to town halls and asking them the tough questions? I mean, I've seen a few good ones at some different, opportunities.
All the candidates that don't have a shot in hell.
Yeah.
Those are the ones.
Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's like, again, how concerned are you really while you're tweeting about not paying your taxes or you're tweeting about government or whatever? How concerned are you really if you are not taking an active role in what is going to be for the next 4 years? Like, now is the time, right? Like, people who sat back and, again, got caught up in the witch hunt when Trump was in office, to your point, when we discussed distractions and where our taxpayer dollars, all we were doing was funneling through judges. That was all used to basically reshape the federal judicial system for the next 30 to 40 years. And they were successful at it. While we sat here caught up in collusion and everything else, they pushed through, I want to say, a quarter, if not a third, of federal judges, 200 or more. Mm-hmm. And they made sure that they were 40 to 45 years old. Those are lifetime appointments. And they made sure that they fell in line, that these are judges that were put in place to uphold, things that they were hoping would come to fruition. So it's like, if you don't know how your government works and you don't know what you're paying, but we're paying. We're paying for those judges.
But who do you trust? Who do you trust? We have two candidates for...
Which is
Senator.
trash.
We have two candidates for this. We have two candidates. Who do you trust? Who do you trust?
That's
why, people who are voting on party, you're fucking idiots, okay? Because your fucking candidate could be just as big a shit pile as my candidate, which is clear because we've had that for the past fucking few elections. So what are we voting on? Where can you make that change? You're talking about going out and voting, but you can only vote on the choices you're giving. So if you can only vote on the choices you're given and they're both shit, what do you vote on?
That's for people. And I agree with you. It's funny. Somebody actually asked me.
So how do you make that change? How do you make that change?
You have to encourage people to get involved in public service. People, this next generation, first of all, both parties are shit out of luck. Take a look at the Senate.
Listen.
We got some agent, my goodness gracious.
Listen to you, Mr. I don't want to pay my fucking taxes. I'm going to tell you one thing right now. If you want to make an uprising about something in this country, take the fucking money out of politics. You'll change the fucking government overnight. Over fucking night. Okay? You can cry about your taxes, how they're spending your money. You can, have to pick between two shitty candidates always. That's all you have. You have two shitty candidates. That's what you pick from. That's not a fucking choice. You want to change politics in this country, you take the fucking money out of it. You take the money out of it, those fucking people will retire.
You're talking about a campaign.
I'm talking about super PACs. I'm talking about all the fucking money that these people get to fucking run to sway their vote when they're in Congress, to fucking support the pharmaceutical company, to support the energy company. Take that out. Take that out. Let people run like they used to run. People used to want to be the mayor of their town.
Most of the people
the mayor of their town.
Yeah. I mean, local elections, I think, work easier that way because most of the people that ran for president prior to super PACs and things like that were independently wealthy anyway.
Yes.
Like, if you go back through the history of our presidents, many of them...
Yeah. I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Came from a little bit of privilege,
but it was all...
to say the least.
But it's the presidents have always been rigged. I mean, Kennedy was rigged. Kennedy's dad was the fucking, So, all of this stuff is, and I'm not saying rigged like, whatever,
Be very
voting.
careful with that word.
But no, fuck that. I hate the fucking sensitivity of this fucking country. Rigged is a fucking word, okay? But that if you want to change our government, the people who are in Congress, the people who are in the Senate, the people who are at fucking presidency, okay? Take the money away from them. If they don't have money on the other side of that, they have to run for a different reason. They have to run because they care. Now they're running because they know if they become a senator, they're fucking setting their family up for life. That's all they're fucking thinking about. They're not thinking about anything else. I become senator, I have power, I can do whatever I want, I get money for my family, period.
So you're speaking for all 100 people that sit in Washington right now.
Listen,
That's
I
what we're
don't
doing.
know every one of them and their personal stories,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all taking money from somebody.
Mm.
You know, that's one of what's his name that's running for the presidency. He swears he's not taking money from anybody, or if that everyone else wouldn't take money, he wouldn't. Oh God, what's his name? I like him too. Vivek.
Okay.
Yes, I like Vivek, but you know, and he's got some good ideas. But then he's got ideas that people like and can wrap their head around, and then he's got some fucking
How does he
cuckoo
feel
ideas
about
that push
taxes,
him.
though?
I don't know. I know
Again-
a lot of people who felt about taxes that everybody should just pay a flat tax.
But here's the problem, though. So we're sitting here having this conversation. This is something that impacts people every single day, right? Like when you are working hard, grinding away, and your paycheck comes in, and literally it says one thing on the gross, and then that net is something very different, whether it's Social Security benefits and it's your state tax or whatever, your federal tax.
And you know that companies have to match that.
Yeah. But my point is, we're more concerned in 2023 with books and letters and, many other frivolous things that, again, will sidetrack the conversation from the thing at the end of the day that really and truthfully impacts your personal quality of life, which is the amount of money you are able to bring back home to your family. Correct?
Yeah.
So you've sat there, you've said this a bunch of times. I'm now sitting here saying it as well. Where are the candidates that are talking to me about that? Where are the candidates that are explaining to me this is what we're going to do? And then on top of that, when they get into office, whichever party it is, how do they actually make that shit happen? Because then you have the holdouts, then you have the other side. And literally the people that we keep putting in office do nothing but hold up progress.
Yeah. Do you want a presidential candidate that can say, hey, look, I already have 40 people in the Senate backing me on this plan to go forward? You give me a candidate that already has political connections and saying, we're going to do this, and I've already got 40 people that are voting on this.
But wasn't that what their party was supposed to be for? Like, wasn't that why you got your guy in and you were supposed to get in there and try to do, like, the shit is fractured.
That's exactly.
It's super fractured at this point, and it's like next level messy.
And the crazy part of the fracture is that I don't really think, they're fighting over the dinner table. I think they're all going to the bank the same as everybody else.
Yeah, I don't
left, right.
I don't believe that
center.
about all of them. I think that you still have
I hope that we have some
altruistic, optimistic, up and comers.
All right,
I don't know.
Let's say 10%.
I don't know what you can say about them when they've been in there for the next 10 years.
Let's say 10% is like that. 10% doesn't do shit. 10%, if we have 10% of people who go in to the Senate or Congress or any kind of government with that level-headedness and I'm doing it for the people, you're putting them in a den of wolves. They have no choice. That's like going to prison. If you go to prison, you have to pick someone to hang out with. You can't just be that lolly, hey, I'm just a good guy over here. No, you either hang out with them, you hang out with them, you hang out with them, you hang out with them. Otherwise, you're getting chewed up and spit out. That's what the fucking federal government is.
We also just don't like change, though, Len.
What was that movie? Distinguished Gentleman? Eddie Murphy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. No. Are you the one where they put him in office?
Yeah.
Is that the one you're talking about? Like he just went on his name?
Yeah, Mr. Distinguished Gentleman. Yeah, but you get bullied once you're in the government. Once you become a senator or a congressman, what do you think? You think Mitch McConnell's going to say, hey, I'm glad you're here taking care of the people? Fuck no. He's going to say, hey, why don't you come over on my team and we're going to vote for this like this, but I'll help you get some stuff through for your city.
But the problem is that when you talk about change, right, I don't think Americans like change. I really don't. I don't think that we're here for, like, we've talked about a lot of the countries that you mentioned.
99% of the people don't like change.
I like it. I understand that. But what you were talking about with other countries that have gotten farther away in the sense of having multiple parties and different people running. So you're getting different ideologies. There's different conversations that are happening. I think that people are scared of that. Hence the reason why the two-party system has just maintained itself. You know, you can get an independent to run, but they usually end up splitting votes from one of the parties, right? But it's like if we really actually had an independent party that was out there running on, you know.
Yeah, if it was a third, and a third, then we might have something getting done.
But again, everybody doubles down, and they double down because they don't like change, really.
You know, and the sad part is that over the last several presidencies, almost all of them, in the last 20 years, they've never had a majority to get things done. They you know, it's,
and if they do, they have it for 2 years.
Yeah,
and
it's not even just about having the majority. It's about the people on the left or right not bulldozing just because they can. There's no compromise at our federal
level. What happens? Have you seen what happens when you try to work with somebody else? Then all of a sudden, your party turns on you. Like this is,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And that's crazy because there used to be bipartisanship. There used to be across the aisles shit that it was like, okay, you know, there were common ground areas, and now it's just on some tit for tat, petty ass bullshit. But can I tell you something though? We've become that as a country. You see it in the comments. You see it in the back and forth. This is who we are. Our government reflects us. We reflect our government, right? Like people reflect leadership, and the leadership is put there by the people. So you can't be mad at what you see happening in Washington when, you know, you don't have to even look that far to see it happening in real life in every single day. Family members not talking to each other anymore over politics. You know what I'm saying? Like people just doubling down on some shit that they wouldn't have even said 10 years ago just because. And that's a scary place to be. And like I said, even with this argument or this conversation just about taxes and stop paying taxes, it's just when I get scared, but then I'm also hopeful because I hope that people will do what you're saying and look a little bit deeper because the information is there and not skewed information. When it comes to what our government is doing, there really is a ledger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It takes work
Somebody
and it takes
wrote it.
time and yeah, but that's with everything, Len. That's the Bible. That's your academic books. That's absolutely everything is from some human being's perspective.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Even their quote-unquote facts, if it was written down in real time, there's still a human emotion behind their experience of that moment. But to me, it's like, when do we get to a point where we start, again, being accountable and asking questions and doing our research? And if we're frustrated with something, really stepping up to the plate and going, why are we doing this? And I'm not here for it, so I'm going to change it. Like I said, the tax thing, most of those taxes are voted on by you. So you don't get to bitch about some shit you didn't take the time to actually go and vote on. If you're not registered to vote, I don't want to hear nothing.
At the state level.
At the state level, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, federal taxes, again, voted on in Washington, those bills, and they're packaged together, but those are all people that went there to represent us. So, you know, there are moments when people say, call your congressperson. I always am curious to know how many people actually do it. Like, how many of the outraged people that see shit.
Have you ever been to Washington?
Yeah.
Have you ever been inside, like, did you ever meet
not
with the
during,
congressperson?
No, not during active, like, session.
Because when I had my first pharmacy, I went there with a compounding group. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of pharmacists, and we, you know, it's a crazy thing to meet with, you know, senators and congressmen. It's nuts, but there's a lot of people doing it every day and stacks of letters, and you know, so I think people do it on a certain level, but does that mean that it's going to change anything? No, because we're still giving the two people.
We are, but at the end of the day, you have the right to vote them out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it takes me back to some of these senators that are sitting
vote in the
office.
next piece of turd.
Don't make them not a piece of. If these.
See, that's part of the disgruntled voter.
Yeah, but Lenny, they don't believe us. We're like the boy who cried wolf. As constituents, we sit here and we yell and we scream and we type away, but what the fuck do we do about it? You know what I mean? You had people who hated that it was Trump and Hillary Clinton, so guess what they did? They just didn't fucking vote. Mm-hmm. or they wrote in Harambe or Hennessy or, some other ridiculousness. You wrote in yourself. I get that. But to my point, if we don't vote them out, right, then they don't know that we mean business. So if you're in California and you are really that upset about what's happening, I don't expect to see your senators sitting in the Senate term after term after term after term. Like, get them out.
I get it.
But again, you need another candidate. And if people are so disgruntled, like, they're not running anymore. You don't see the debate teams. You don't see the student government people. I don't hear young people talking about wanting to be a senator, wanting to be a congressperson, wanting to even work for a lobby or, you know what I mean?
You do. All the Ivy League kids.
Because they understand the power. They understand what it is, but they come from families that have drilled that into them and establishments that have said that this is where it's at, baby.
Become senator, you'll be a billionaire.
So tell Richie from down the street the same shit. You know what I mean?
You can tell him, but
But again, that's a whole other podcast. That's access. That's seeing it. Remember, we've talked about this. It's why access and opportunity, two different things, and why they're so important, and also representation and seeing people that look like you and come from your background. But anyway. Please pay your taxes, guys. I like that my police officers come when I need them. I like that the fire department puts out fires. I like that our teachers...
And if you're going to leave comments, fulfill them. Just say, we should all just stop paying our taxes. It's not really a comment. What taxes? Federal? Sales? You can stop paying sales tax anytime you want. Stop buying things.
Yeah.
Go off the grid. Go off the grid. Sales tax is over.
Yep.
Go off the grid. Income tax is over.
There you go.
You don't make any money, you can't pay any taxes.
This is what I'm talking about. Solutions.
There you go.
Solutions to your problem.
And we don't fucking complain on this goddamn podcast, people.
We've got woods left. No, we talk about real shit, and then people just don't like what we say.
We're not complaining.
No.
We're informing. So go fuck yourself, whoever left that comment.
I'm done. Okay. Anyway, you heard his timer go off. That's episode 71 of the ManTFup podcast. We will see you next time right here in the Man Cave. Jeez, Len.
Peace.